A viewer sends me a melody, a few notes, nothing more. I spend a day building an orchestral piece around it, strings, brass, woodwinds, the whole thing. Then I open a studio, paste in those same backbone notes, and I ask it to do the same. That's how this video ends, but before we get to this battle, I want to show you 3 other features in a studio that, as someone who lives in a DAW writing orchestral music, actually made me stop and think just a little bit. Hi and welcome back to the channel. Studio Drop version 2.0, and they are clearly not trying to be just a vocal synth anymore. We've got new generative kits, AI instruments, including additional strings and brass instruments, MusicXML import, and just released last week a full video composer feature where you drop in a video and it scores it for you. I'm going to test all of it today, so without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so let's start with one of my orchestral pieces from the previous video. If you're interested in, you can find the link in the description when we talk about the percussion in the orchestral context. We have here strings, brass, woodwinds, and some percussion underneath. The percussion was always meant to be a rhythmic backbone, nothing fancy. And I want to know is, if I strip that percussion layer out completely, what does Studio think should be there? The Add a Layer generative kit, the feature of the Studio, is designed exactly for this. So you bring in your audio, tell it what context you are working in, and it generates a new musical layer to complement what's already there. So let's take this audio to the Studio and let's find out what it brings to life. Okay, so we have the blank canvas of Studio. It looks like a general DAW, which you are totally familiar with. So the first step is feeding the Ace with the basic audio. So we get our representative track, drop in, and maybe let's make it a little bit shorter to fit the grid. Yeah, this should be perfect. And now let's listen the track without this initial percussion layer. Okay, so now if we want to receive the additional layer, we should click right here, AI Tools, Add a Layer, and now we have the additional box to check. So the layer type, this is some kind of a pre-prompt which tells the Studio what it should do. So I already clicked the percussion and I describe the style and the prompt. So the percussion layer featuring only orchestral percussion instruments. This is, I think, very important because if we do not implement such a negative prompt, let's say, I'm more than sure that the Studio will bring some additional instruments, percussion instruments, which are not typically involved into the orchestral composition. And I also describe the mood, so the percussion should be kept in the epic cinematic style / mood. And now we click generate and we will wait for the generation for a few seconds. Okay, so first reaction, what I notice is that the layer fits the tempo, a rhythmic pattern is properly made, and the prediction in this respect is accurate. However, we can notice that the layer is not very sophisticated. It's rather a basic rhythmic backbone and first step percussion layer. What is also important, at the end we have a dynamic roll of the percussion, so it predicts also the dynamics and emotional impact of the end of the composition. So as I said, for a first pass layer idea, that's genuinely not bad. You wouldn't necessarily publish this straight out of the box, but as a starting point, as a way to hear a direction, it's totally useful, especially if you are totally stuck and you don't know where to start with your percussion layer, because you can always add some additional upper register, higher pitched percussion instruments. So if you feel that you totally do not know where to start, this is something which can give you a taste of your future percussion layer, in my humble opinion. Okay, so off camera I tried another thing. I create another percussion layer, but this time focusing on this high-pitched percussion instrument which I mentioned previously in my statement. So if we go to the exact prompt which I used, you can see that again we have the percussion layer featuring only high-pitched orchestral percussion instrument. I also take some instruction which instruments should be used, so features shakers and other high-pitched orchestral percussion instruments, and without any low percussion. This again negative prompt is intentional because I do not want to double the previous layer of the low percussion. So let's find out how the layer sounds on its own. So it definitely has the shakers as it intended to be, but nevertheless, of my negative prompts, this layer unfortunately doubles some low percussion instruments. But let's find out how it will sound with the previous layer and the original audio file. Generally, the whole piece with this layer is not bad, and as I said previously, as a starting point, if you are totally stuck and you do not want which of the instruments should be used in your orchestral composition, this is decent starting point which should serve you as a, let's say, collaborator of your percussion layer. So now for the better comparison, let's listen to the original track with the original percussion instruments and percussion layer. So I don't want to sound as an arrogant, but in my humble opinion, this version is better balanced. This is the first statement, and I feel that the usage of the instrument in my version is intentional, let's say, into the comparison of the A Studio version. But here in my piece we have the mix and master work already done, so maybe this comparison is not fully fair. I think it would be better to leave the judgment for you, so drop the comment and let me know which of the version is better out of the box in your opinion. This one I had to double check was real. I heard A Studio could score video now, as in you drop in a clip and it generates music to picture. That's not a small claim, to be honest, so let's find out what exactly it can do. This feature landed in the 2.0.7 update literally last week. It's called Video Composer. and according to the docs, it analyzes your video frame by frame, detects scene cuts and motion, and then generates music and sound effects also as editable clips on a timeline. Still in beta, so this is a fair warning. But what is also important for me and for especially composers who compose the music for video games, it generates not only the music but also the sound effects. So very interesting. Okay, so I already imported my clip. This is the cartoon style video with some interesting mood switch when a bird later on is hit by the rock. So I think this choice, this excerpt is a good starting point for testing whether a studio is capable to match the pacing to the scene cuts, because this is a very important thing when you compose the music to the picture, to the film. Now, this is the kind of thing where you would normally be reaching for a DAW with a regular VST instrument and start something from scratch. Let's point out to which of the excerpt of this clip Ace should generate the music by simply highlighting it. And after that, here we have the overall duration of the clip. So let's write something. And what is important when we compose in that situation, we can talk with the AI as in the regular AI chat. So I wrote that I need the orchestral cartoon music for this very part, and I also implement some instructions. So the instruction is that the music should fit the build up to the moment when the bird is hit by the rock. And we will click generate, and we will wait for the few minutes because it will take some time, because as I said previously, firstly Ace will analyze the clip, analyze the cutscenes and overall path of the video, and after that it will generate the music for us. Okay, so I'm back with the music. As you can see in this chat window, I implement another instruction to regenerate this specific part of hitting the bird by the rock, because at first generation it was not as accurate as intended by myself. So after that it changed, and let's find out what Ace delivered to us. Right, so the placement of the cues around the cuts is accurate. From the orchestral production standpoint, what I found interesting and surprising is that Ace gets this cartoon orchestral sounds decently. Maybe the orchestration, or what is more important, composition, is not very sophisticated, but it matches the mood properly, and this is a good starting point. We can hear this specific artificial sound of generally of the audio, this hiss, but it's typical for AI music generation. What is also strange, a little bit strange for me, is that this very moment when we see the river, the music seems to be also in the river, because Ace implements some kind of EQ maybe and cut higher frequencies in this very moment. But maybe this was let's say artistic choice of the artificial intelligence, so who knows. The idea here, and I think this is the right framing, is that the video composer gives some kind of a musical blueprint first sketch, as previously for the add layer feature. It handles basically the sync work really good. And to be honest, I did not expect that the sync will match castings properly, so this is surprisingly good, and this is the surprise for me. So you can focus on the actual composing decisions rather than figuring out what the tempo should be implemented in your composition. For someone writing to a picture in DAW, especially for the first time, it's a fast sketch pad which gives you the overall idea of the scene tempo, as I said, without the need to figure it out by yourself. Nevertheless, and let's be honest, the composition part is definitely far from what advanced composers will do with some general musical theory background. But maybe this is only the case of this very situation of my prompt, who knows. And also the feature is in a beta mode, so I'm really curious what Ace will bring in the next updates. So to sum up, I think this tool should serve you as a contributor, a supporter, not as a competitor. And this is a good point for us as human beings. If the path of the development of the feature will go this way, so to serve as a contributor, as a supporter for us, for the human being composers, I am totally in, especially for this educational part for the beginner composers. Now we are getting into the territory where Ace Studio really started as a tool, so vocal synthesis. But in 2.0 they've added something that matters a lot for the composers, so MusicXML import. If you write notation in Sibelius, Finale, MuseScore, Dorico, wherever, you can now export MusicXML and drop it straight into the Ace Studio. And I want to test this with something, in my humble opinion, challenging. So I took the Agnus Dei, this is the Samuel Barber Adagio for strings adapted into choral form, and I exported a excerpt as a music XML. Why this piece? Because it's slow, it's emotional, it's emotionally exposed, it has long held notes, and the choir writing is extremely delicate. So there is nowhere to hide if the synthesis is rough. If you look on the screen, you can see that we have already set up the MIDI information from the MusicXML. This is the direct import, as I said. If you want to import such a file, you go here, so file, import MusicXML, and you are ready to go. For the sake of time, I only set one vocal per part, with the exception for the altos, so one soprano, two altos, one tenor, and one bass. I wouldn't tweak too much with the overall MIDI information because I want to test how the Ace Studio will behave straight out of the box, really. So now let's listen of the results. Okay, so the tone, pronunciation, legato are totally fine, and I think especially the pronunciation, legato phrasing is better developed than in the regular VST instrument. However, what feels synthetic and drives me crazy is pitch, which is off. And I know that for the regular choir ensemble, some imperfections considering the pitch are regular and normal, but in this very example, this is too much for me. The second thing is that the initial vibrato of Ace generation was too prominent. Nevertheless, it is totally customizable, and we can tweak something with making vibrato less prominent. We can also tweak the power, softness of the vocals. If we go to the MIDI region, you can see that we have the power feature, softness of the vocal, breathy, the chest factor, and also for the operatic vocals we can set the amount of the operativeness, let's say. So if you want to have your vocal more rounded one, you can set this factor even higher than the 100%, and for the choir ensemble this is the desired thing in my humble opinion. Nevertheless, this pitch thing which is off, this is especially prominent here, so let's listen it together again. Yeah, especially sopranos are off. This is something which is really unpleasant for the listener, but I'm more than sure that this is the case of lack of knowledge of the programming of these vocals, so maybe I will figure it out later. So now let's maybe open the Cubase and set the same MIDI information from this MusicXML to the regular East-West choir library. Then we can compare the performance of A Studio and the VST, regular VST instruments, and maybe a tweak also with the A Studio with adding another reverb, regular reverb, maybe some volume automation. Yeah, we'll see. So let's open the Cubase. Okay, now we are in the Cubase. As I set the same information, MIDI information for the regular VST instrument. We have the Opus Choir here for each of the instances. I tweak a little bit the automation, but this is only the modulation one for the sake of time and to make the comparison fair. So as I said, I did not tweak too much with the A Studio, and also I did not tweak either too much with a regular VST. So let's listen of the performance of VST instrument. The difference I hear most clearly is that the VST, regular VST, has better ensemble band, is easier to get the quick results, satisfying quick results, because this is the work of 10 minutes. Yeah, this is the 10 minutes of my work. So bearing that in mind, I think the ensemble blend of the VST is better. Nevertheless, we should take in mind and have in mind that this is the ensemble. So multi-sopranos, altos, tenors, and basses. On the other hand, for the A's, we've got only one vocal per part. So this is something worth to mention. So maybe now let's listen again of the A Studio Choir, I added a little bit of the reverb. This is the cinematic rooms reverb, and a little bit of Maserati set to the master to get the compression, to better blend the sounds, and to take up some lows and highs, and to take up overall volume of the ensemble of A Studio Choir. Ace has a more natural vowel shape, even if we would use a word builder for the East-West choir, and this is something which makes the Ace really good tool and really interesting tool when we want to generate choir ensemble with lyrics. It will be much easier to do because we can simply write the lyrics for each of the parts, and the AI generation tool will implement the lyrics properly to the notes which was set on this track. So this is very important, very easy to work with in comparison to regular word builder VSTs. And I think something will be interesting. Maybe we'll try to blend VST with the Ace and find out whether we are able to get the best of both words. So I inserted some changes to the stereo balance. As you can see, we have sopranos taken to the left, altos a little bit more centered and narrowed from the left and the right, and basses are placed on the right side of the stereo field. I also take the volume of Ace choir down because there we have the individual vocals, so it will be they will be more prominent than the ensemble one. So to blend it just a little bit better, I take the volume down. So let's find out and let's listen for the final results. This blend experiment, to be honest, was not bad because we've got ensemble performance from regular VST and beautiful lyrical singing from Ace, which is top now in my opinion in comparison to the competition. Please also bear in mind that here I only took a couple of minutes to play with mix settings, so imagine what we can do when we spend some time and find out the right audio solution for that blend. From my perspective, this is a very useful tool which can overall improve the realism of choir, both as an ensemble and a layer of full orchestral writing. But for a working composer, the real question is which one would actually use in a session. And honestly, it depends on the context. For a situation when you do not have much time and want to present quick reference demo for presenting a sketch to a director or another client, regular VST library will be faster, still faster, because once you've changed one parameter, let's say expression or modulation, you instantly hear the results. However, with ACE, you need to wait for regeneration, and this is normal for AI generation tool. So for a final deliverable where you need full control over every nuance, and as an assumption you have more time to work with the tool, I would say that I will try to do this entirely with Studio or implement this blend technique which I presented as an experiment. What is also important with ACE, we can either create instant sopranos, altos, tenors and basses ensemble with the choir mode. So when we go to our ACE Studio project, when we click on the vocal, we can see this turn on choir mode, and when we click here, now we can add additional vocalist. It can be different than this initial, or we can right click on this and duplicate the voice many times. What is also important, when we go to the affixes, we can change the regular insert of the reverb to the room effect. So we can place one vocalist on the left, the second on the right, or we can push back or get on the front our vocalist. So we can set a really convincing stereo field and stereo placement of our ensemble. So this is another thing which makes the ACE a really useful tool for getting the realistic results of our choir composition. What is also important, this very example which I presented is really rough, without much tweaking, because as I said, I want to show out of the box results. But I will leave the link in the description to Leandro Gardini demo, which blew me away when I first heard it. This is the demo of using the ACE Studio for a choir ensemble together with the strings. And his example, in my humble opinion, really shows what you can do with ACE vocals in respect to choir ensemble, and using also the choir with the regular orchestra instruments, so strings, woodwinds, brass in the full ensemble set. And the very moment, battle. In the last video, as you know, I put out the call. Send me a melody idea, few notes, nothing more. And one of the viewers sent me this. A simple but very interesting line, and I took it as a compositional challenge. I sat down and I built a full orchestral piece around it, the whole architecture. So now let me show you some excerpts of my composition workflow, and after that we will put this melody straight into ACE and find out whether its composition will be better. Firstly, melody. What we have here. So maybe the melody we will play with strings. Yeah. Okay, now let's maybe add some woodwinds, maybe flute, clarinet, bassoon to support the cellos. Okay, let's try it. Maybe a little bit of harp to add the movement. Okay, so I wrote another section. This ending is so predictable. Maybe we can use this ending which I played on the piano at first time. I will change the tonality a little bit, it will be more interesting. Okay, so yeah, let's write the piano. It's too empty. Maybe some tremolo on strings. What can I hear here? Yeah, tremolo, some brass sustain, a little bit of flute, and a timpani roll at the beginning. Nice. Yeah, but this is still unfinished. We don't have a proper beginning. Yeah, let's record it. That can be good. So woodwinds now. Okay, a little bit of break. What's next? Yeah, with this ascending melody. that could work. Okay, so let's listen maybe. Nice, 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 nice. This is the lack of movement here. Yeah, only celeste gives the rhythmic pattern. Or maybe it is viola divisi. This is nice. Okay, so let's try to record it. It can sit. So let's play a little bit with the expression modulation. Better, much better. Let's play maybe with the woodwinds in this initial part to enhance a little bit of flutes, and we'll be ready to mix, I think. By the way, this is a very cool plugin when we talk about mastering, maybe rather than a mix. This is the Maserati from Waves. Yeah, this is the Tony Maserati. This is a great plugin to add volume, tweak a little bit with the high, mid and low frequencies in the same plugin, and also you can compress a little bit overall volume and overall sound of your instruments. So we can play a short A/B test, and it's easy to use. Really, you can tweak also with the sensitivity of the plugin, with the output, so overall gain which this plugin add. But bear in mind that if you want to tweak with the Tony Maserati, you should leave a little bit of headroom on your instruments before you insert this plugin on your master chain. Okay, so maybe off camera I will tweak a little bit with some minor issues which drives me crazy, and we will meet back to listen for the whole piece. So that's what I came up with. Now let's take the same melody into A Studio Music Enhancer kit. And Music Enhancer is one of 3 new generative AI kits in 2.0 version of A Studio. And the idea of developer is that you bring in a musical seed, so melody, humming, a rough idea simply, and it builds it into a fuller piece. I'm giving it the same melody, nothing else, only the basic prompt, which will be based on the instrumentation, orchestration and composition mood of my composition. So let's see what it does. Okay, so we are back in the A Studio. We have the melody, so let's listen. I take the MIDI notes from this melody which viewers send me and put it into the ensemble strings VST sorry, instrument patch of A Studio. So it sounds like this. This is our seed for the A's, and I use the music enhancer. So as you can see, for lyrics I implement the instrumental, so we don't want any lyrics at all. And style was described as cinematic orchestral music, featuring as the most prominent lush strings ensemble, because from my perspective my piece was mainly based on the string sound. I also insert that the piece is kept in the some kind of melancholic mood, 60 BPM, and for the negative prompt I insert the note that the instrumentation is not using any popish sounds and instruments, because in my original piece we don't have any of them. So I click generate 2 times by mistake, but we can now choose one of the pieces from this 4 which was generated by Ace. It took maybe 30 seconds, maybe a little bit longer. So in comparison to my work, it took me something like 5-6 hours to compose my piece. So we can see and hear how Ace can deal with such a short amount of time. So let's listen. Okay, so now I can rest in peace musically. I'm just kidding. Here's where I land on this. What Ace does, and does it well, are dynamics of the strings especially. We did not hear generic string sound without any modulation or expression. This is definitely there, and this is big step in comparison to previous music generation toolkits from 1 year ago. The structure of the piece is also some kind of intentional. Maybe this abrupt change of the mood with inserting short solo violin notes is not accurate at all, but overall Ace took the melody and developed it several times in different configurations. What also surprised me is that harmonic choices, especially chord progressions, are almost really the same as mine, which shows that Ace understands harmonical rules and what is important not only on the really basic level as previously for previous music generation toolkit. However, the biggest disadvantage is this artificial sound. I feel like I was listening to the music which was, let's say, EQ'd in a very aggressive manner and after that put into a little bit broken studio monitors. I cannot describe it better, but I'm sure you get what I have on mind. This is something which can be definitely improved over future updates, so Ace, if you hear me, you can take it for the consideration. Nevertheless, the piece is better than I expected, and the final question is, which composition is better? So let me know in the comment section, because I think you are the only one who can judge it. From my perspective, we cannot really compare it 100%, bearing in mind especially those sound quality artifacts which I described previously. This isn't really about which one is better. Maybe this is only my opinion, but I think that's the wrong frame. What this tells me is that Ace has a strong sense of harmonic language. It can develop music rhythmically, it can create textures, maybe a little bit blurry, not as defined as VST when we can hear each of the instrument and each of the section. But what it can't replicate yet is the specific intent behind every note. So, for example, the reason why I chose to bring in the flute in some moments, or double some instrument exactly here or there, or why I held back the brass until the build-up section. And that's the thing about composing. The choices that feel inevitable when you hear the finished piece. Those are actually the hardest to generate, in my opinion, because they are not random. They are motivated and they are based on the emotions of real humans. Ace Studio from the perspective on an orchestral composer. Here is my summary. Other layer is genuinely useful as a creative prompt generator. Video composer is impressive for a beta. It solves a real problem for anyone scoring to picture, so finding the right tempo for the picture. The MusicXML import with vocal synthesis is the most technically impressive thing here, and if you are writing choral pieces or choral layers to your composition, this is really worth serious attention. What is also good about it is that it only replaces your tool and not you as a human being. And finally, musical enhancer. It's a fast idea machine, definitely. Whether it's a competitor or collaborator, it really depends entirely on the needs of the audience, in my humble opinion. Whether it will be a more demanding one or a little bit less so. Nevertheless, I am still the guy who will lean on my musical knowledge rather than a whole ready-to-go composition which was generated. If you like this video, remember to hit the like button and subscription if you think that I can bring you some value also in the future videos. Project file of my composition, of choir, fast test and Ace composition will be available on my Buy Me a Coffee profile, so make sure to check the link in the description. Thanks for watching, and as always, happy composing for all of you.